What's up, everybody? Welcome back into another episode of The Lawyer You Know. And today we started cross-examination on Jennifer McCabe, one of the prosecution's key witnesses. And it was brutal from a lawyer's point of view and how you work through something like this. We're going to compare parts of it to the first trial. We're going to compare what we think the jury is thinking, why lawyers ask certain questions and use certain strategy when a witness is acting like this, and how this story fits into the Commonwealth's case and the Commonwealth's timeline. And of course, is her story changing? We will answer all your questions. Make sure you take a second to hit that like button. Let's get to it. All right. So before we get to that cross-examination, of course, we have to finish the direct examination of Jennifer McCabe. And like we said yesterday, I do think overall her demeanor and her presentation is better round two. She was a bit aggressive round one. She definitely felt like she had a dog in the fight, no pun intended. Round one, this time she seemed like more of she is John O'Keefe's friend. She cares about John O'Keefe. She was just called that morning, and she did everything she could to help, and she is here of no choice of her own, right? And from my perspective, that is a better background and a better entry into getting to know Jennifer McCabe and why she's here for the jury than somebody who, again, has a dog in the fight. They talk a little bit more about Bella's mom. They, went to sidebar. I don't think it's landed much with the jury at this point. They listened to the 911 call. They talk about a man being in the snow and not saying John O'Keefe. If he's your best friend, why wouldn't you say his name? Well, I wanted to be quick and just give them what they needed to tell me what to do next. And so they could call first responders out to the scene. She knew how old he was because, their birthdays were close to each other. She explains the scene, all the officers she talked to, Sheriff Lank, etc. She knows some of them is friendly, but not friends. She doesn't know others. And then they get to Google hypothermia. How long would it take a body to die in the cold? And that's going to be the first section that we listen to Jennifer McCabe testify about because it is so important. And Alan Jackson even talks about it in his cross of the Ian Whiffen. You know why this is important, right? We think it happened at 2:27. You think it happened at 6 a.m. It's important. Was she searching it? Was she wondering how long it takes a body to die in the cold, or was Karen Reed? To me, that is the ultimate question at this point. Kaylee said, Peter, my mom and two aunts love your recaps and watch all the time. Shout out to the Fleming sisters. Yes, shout to the Fleming sisters. All right, let's take a listen here to Jennifer McCabe explaining how long to die in the cold.
As I stated, I have multiple sclerosis. So when I'm out in either extremely hot or cold temperatures, I lose the feeling and sensation in my fingers, which obviously made the Googling very hard for me to do because of my, motor skills.
So when you were outside of the car with the defendant and she had asked you to do a search regarding hypothermia, did you try to do that?
Yes, I did.
Do you know the exact time from your memory? Not from reading or learning, but from your memory. Do you remember the exact time you did that?
No.
Was it after the police came that morning?
Yes.
Had you ever attempted to search about hypothermia anytime before that moment, that morning?
No.
Or that day?
No.
That week?
No.
Was this the first time that morning after the defendant asked you to search that you searched that phrase?
Yes, it was.
And did you complete your search and get a result?
So I don't know what came up because I think as I entered it, I think I misspelled things.
So before we get to what actually came up, that is her explanation. She has never searched it before. She had no reason to search it before. She only searched it because Karen Reed asked her to search it. And again, with this demeanor, Hank Brennan is making sure as we go down the line, we get the facts that we need as the Commonwealth. Jennifer McCabe is more than happy to give him those facts. And that's how she's walking the dog down the road at this point. Now, why these things are
and so then I think I tried.
Captions are bothering me. So why didn't you get any results? This explanation, I was like, yeah, I might not have even asked this if I was Brennan, because you got the point you needed to get. But here's her explanation as to maybe I spelled some things wrong. It's like, that's the hard part. When you're prepared, some would call it coached as a witness, to still act like you don't know certain things. Like at a certain point, she was like, oh, there is a side door or a second front door to Fairview. It's like, really? You didn't know that there was? And depending on how a jury picks up on it, it can be a little bit of a side eye, or it can be a nothing burger.
A second search. And again, I don't think I even paid attention to what came up because we were already on to the next thing. Karen was already moving and screaming about, the next thing to Kerry. Are they working on him? Is he dead?
Did the defendant move somewhere from the?
And like, I decided to search it, but I didn't really care what came up. It's like, so was Karen wondering? Because if Karen was like, I want to know how long until you die in the cold, she probably wanted an answer, I would think. I don't know.
When she first asked you to try to Google about hypothermia to something else?
She was next to me, and then I think she took off. Like, she kept kind of running off.
And what did you do?
I believe as they were putting, I think I stood there, I believe as they were putting John into the ambulance, I went back kind of to the original spot where we had been talking to the police. And at that point, a new officer might have come because I remember talking to multiple officers there.
At some point, did you go back towards the area of Ms. Roberts' car?
Yes, that's where I'm referring to. Sorry.
At some point, were you with the defendant when she spoke to an officer and a first responder?
Yes.
Do you remember if the first responder was a man or a woman?
I remember there was a woman right next to us. Yes.
Do you remember if that was before or after the defendant asked you to search about hypothermia?
I'd be guessing if I then don't.
Don't guess.
Mm-hmm.
When the defendant was speaking to the first responder, the woman, were you near?
So one thing I thought was, if I want to point it out, if I'm Hank Brennan, there were some things she didn't know on direct as well, right? So there's a ton of I don't know, and I apologize, I just can't remember on cross, and we're going to get there. But she did say I don't know at least a couple times, definitely not the same amount on direct, but it's not like she knew every little detail exactly as Hank Brennan wanted them.
Yes.
Did you hear or do you remember the defendant saying anything to the first responder?
Yes.
What did she say?
She told the first responder, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
When she told the first responder, I hit him, how?
Also, a point you have to get out, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. She got that out over and over again. If you're the Commonwealth and she's your star witness, you got to make sure the facts come out that you need, and that's one of them.
Did you react?
I was like startled, kind of like, what are you saying? What are you talking about?
Did you say anything to the defendant?
I think after the second or third time she was saying it, I was like, Karen, like, what are you saying?
Why were you trying to interrupt her?
Because I thought she was just talking crazy. And I'm saying, why is she saying she hit him?
Were you trying to look out for her?
Yeah.
Sustain. I'll strike you. Can I ask it differently?
What was your motive?
Were you trying to look out for her? Clearly leading. And this is where it's really annoying with lay witnesses, because then he says, what were your motivations for doing that? And now she knows because he said, were you looking out for her?
Motivation for trying to interrupt the defendant making the statements to the first responder.
Karen was hysterical, irrational, kind of.
I'll move on.
Oh, okay, I'm going to see counsel at sidebar for just a minute, please.
It's like, let's take a second. I was hoping when she said, I'm going to see counsel at sidebar, that she said, Mr. Brennan, stop leading the witness. Stop leading the witness. Because he keeps doing it. And again, with experts, it doesn't bother me. With cops, it does bother me. With lay witnesses, it bothers me the most. Okay, then we get to... Okay, so this I thought was interesting. Officers ask her to go inside to speak to her sister. So there's two ways to look at this. Number one, that the cops did want to know what was going on inside and talk to the people inside, and they make it seem a lot less nefarious, or that they had to ask her to go inside and talk to her sister that she wouldn't want to, right? So there's kind of multiple ways to look at all these facts depending on what the jury is thinking. I'm going to jump ahead just a little bit.
Do anything or go anywhere?
Yes. Officer Lang asked me to go into my sister's house and to wake them up.
And your sister's name again?
My sister, Nicole.
And that is the house you were in the night before?
Yes.
And after you spoke to the officer, they requested you go in to speak to your sister, did you?
Yes.
Was there any directive on what you should speak to your sister about?
No.
After the officers asked you to go into the house, did you? Do
Yes, I did.
you remember what door you went through?
Yes, I went through the front door.
Was the door locked?
Yes.
How did you get in?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said, was it unlocked?
No, I asked if it was locked.
Oh, sorry. It was unlocked.
As you're approaching the house, were there any lights on?
No.
Was it dark?
Yes.
Any sign of any movement inside the house before you went in?
No.
Take us through walking through the front door. What happens?
So I went in the front door. I opened the door. I walked up the stairs into their hallway, and then I think I knocked on their door.
Bedroom door?
Their bedroom door. And then I opened the door. I went in and I walked over to the bed and I was like, Brian, Nicole, because I was in a position where I felt like the world was going on around me. So much was happening, but I also was aware that I was just about to wake up two people that are sound asleep, and they're going to see me standing over their bed and be startled, wondering, what am I doing here?
So what happens?
So it took a minute or two, and then Brian woke up and he immediately was like startled and was like, Jennifer, what's going on? What are you doing? And then I believe I tried the best I could to say what was going on. I think I said, we found
You don't
John.
need to describe again, but I want.
And on Cross, when she talks a little bit about that, like, you were whispering what the heck's going on. She's like, I didn't want them to think something terrible had happened. It's like, well, something terrible did happen, right? Something terrible did happen. So if it was me, I definitely wouldn't have waited for a cop to tell me to go into my sister's house. I would have run in there, gotten them out there, asked what happened. Can they shed any light? Can we figure out what happened to my friend John? That's what I would have done. I don't know how the jury is going to see this, but that was her explanation. Then they go through the dash cam footage, point people out. She repeats that Karen said I hit him 3 times. She talks about the broken tail light. She didn't tell them about the broken taillight at first, but then called them later and said, I remember about the broken taillight. She called them as soon as she remembered because she knew it was important. But something that the prosecution witnesses are doing a better job of this time is at least giving a reason why there are so many inconsistent statements. And they're saying it was traumatic. So much was going on. We didn't remember what's happening. Now, of course, they don't apply that to the I hit him. Could I have hit him? Should I have hit him? Karen Reed was definitely making an admission and not saying anything in the, traumatic mindset. But they are doing a better job to me of explaining that's why there were some inconsistencies. But as soon as I thought about it, I called the officers. It also doesn't seem like as much of a misstep or gaps in time. Now, we haven't heard from a lot of law enforcement yet. And I've been waiting to see how Hank Brennan is going to deal with this horrible, embarrassing investigation. But as the lay witnesses are explaining, it seems like, okay, cops show up. They tell me to go inside. Okay, so the cops wanted to know what happened inside. We talked to the people inside. Cops show up, ask me some questions. I forgot some stuff, so I called them back and I told them the stuff that I forgot. To me, it sounds a lot better and a lot more plausible in trial number 2 than it did in trial number 1. Pretty much everything they explained in trial number 1, I was like, how is that possible? Now, of course, still makes no sense that the people living in 34 Fairview didn't come out with all this going on. And she tries to quibble with Jackson at one point. Well, it was in the front of the yard, down the road, kind of, not really in front. It's like, if there's emergency vehicles in the neighborhood, all the neighbors are coming out and looking. Like, come on, especially if it's on your front lawn. Like, I find that very hard to believe, but that's her story at this point. They talk about how the fact that she went to Meadows to be with the O'Keefes because she loves the O'Keefes. Everybody was there. It was a packed house, except for, who wasn't there? Karen Reed. She's the only one that wasn't there because she's guilty, and that shows consciousness of guilt. She didn't say that, but I think that's what the prosecution is trying to get at there. Then on the way home from the O'Keefes, they just went home, real quick stop at one of their kids' friend's house. Also happens to be Sergeant Lank. She may or may not have gone inside to use the bathroom. Doesn't sound like they were there for 40 plus minutes, which I believe is what Carrie Roberts testified to, but she is explaining the story, right? And this is Jennifer McCabe's version of the events. So what was their conversation about with Mrs. Lank? Let's listen to that here.
Yes, it was freezing.
When she was offering her support, was she inside or outside of the car?
She jumped into the back seat.
During that time you spent with Officer Lank's wife, did you ever go into the house?
I have a faint memory. I think I went in and used the bathroom at one point.
When you were having the conversation with Mr. Lank's wife, were you talking about what had happened?
Yes, Carrie was just explaining the morning, the phone calls, the scene, things like that.
Were you trying to get any type of inside information or push the investigation in any particular direction?
No, I didn't speak much. It was mostly Carrie and Trish was just being a supportive friend to Carrie.
At some point, did you get together with Ms. Roberts and try to memorialize what you had saw or thought that morning?
Yes.
Why did you do that?
Peg had asked Carrie to do a timeline. So Carrie came over and we were sitting down talking about it. And so my sister was there and she said that she would jot it down for us.
And so
they get no inside information. She just kind of tells Lank what happens, and later O'Keefe asks for the timeline. So a witness is allowed to explain their answer to a certain degree, but they have to answer the question asked. You can't say, Peter, you did a video at 5:35. And I say, well, I went to work all day. I had a meeting with a client. I settled a case. I had a lunch meeting. It's like, no. Answer the question, yes, because the jury can get lost in your story. Yes, I did a video at 5:35, but that was after I did X, Y, and Z. Fine. You can explain your answer, but you have to answer the question. Charlotte said, I don't know the right time to ask this, but how did they figure out the SIM card from the cell phone was disposed of on a military installation? I think Higgins told them. Netwoman said, did you notice the slip up when she called her testimony a story? Yes. And then she made it even more obvious trying to fix it. Did they say in the first proceeding that the door was unlocked? I didn't remember that either. Doors unlocked, lights are off, all this stuff. And I still would have been like, oh crap. Did something happen to them? If something happened to John O'Keefe and he looks like this and these guys are all in law enforcement, did somebody come and do something to these guys? Their door is just unlocked. I thought that was kind of wild too. Charicity said, every witness with the Commonwealth says that they were shown their previous testimony and prep for this trial, yet none of them remember what they said from the last trial. Is it just me that's confused? So I don't know if the defense is going to bring it all around. I think they should, because I was picking up on that too. And the I don't remember is what I had last trial, or my memory's getting better, or I can read. She thought she found a trick where I can read the words on the paper, Mr. Jackson, but it's not helping refresh my recollection. To me, a lawyer that knows how this works, I'm like, that's BS. I'm calling BS on it. You're reading what you said and you're still saying it doesn't refresh your recollection from 1 year ago on the same exact subject from the same exact question. But it is a way that witnesses can try to dance around answering a question inconsistently or saying, I don't recall, or I don't remember. I do so apologize, Mr. Jackson. I just don't remember. And me reading exactly what I said to the same exact question 1 year ago is just not refreshing my recollection. That can be so frustrating for lawyers. And we're going to talk about how to deal with that as best we can when we get to Jackson's Cross, which, did you give him your phone? Yeah, I wanted to cooperate every way I could. Okay. So now we are at cross-examination. Okay. And if you are going to go back and review your testimony, you know what you said. So to then come and say, I don't know, it doesn't refresh my recollection, and to change your story, you as a lawyer have to do your best to get out the previous story as well. And there's a number of ways you can do this. And we're going to use some examples as we go through cross to see how Jackson did it. He starts off, last time we talked to Carrie, this morning, the kids were going to stay home from school. I thought that was interesting. Oh, somebody else brought this up. Nashley, is it true that Brennan can't have a Zoom meeting last night with Jenn? I don't know what you mean by can't. I did hear them mention it. And then I heard Jackson not use that as an example of one of the meetings she had with the Commonwealth. So I don't know if that was something else. Or if they told her, I'll tell you what, to give Jenn McCabe credit, she has not forced the witness intimidation. She's mentioned trauma and what they've been through and all this, but I think the jurors are thinking it has to do with the trauma of finding your friend in the snow. She has not said the witness intimidation, harassment, all that stuff. She hasn't said it. She hasn't forced it in. Last trial, she couldn't wait to. So I don't know if it was something like that. Sometimes we have to talk to witnesses and say, hey, listen, I know either you talked about this last time or you talked about this in your depo, or the judge said you cannot say this. And that may be the only reason for a call. If that's the case, we're not going to hold it against an ethical lawyer like, Jackson is trying to do here. Not going to hold that against the Commonwealth if that's what it was about. I don't know what it was about. But to me, that it sounds like it might have been about that. They've never they don't discuss their testimony, she said with Carrie. They've talked about the case many times, but not their testimony. And that was one of Jackson's. So we're going to try to also highlight what are Jackson's big themes. And you tell me, what do you think Jackson's big themes are in cross-examination? Because when it gets clunky, when you have to impeach and refresh recollection over and over again, that can be very difficult. That can be very difficult. And to me, one of the main themes was getting all of your stories straight or affecting all of the other witnesses' story. And we'll talk about the different ways that they talk about that. She met 5 times or 4 times with the prosecutors to prep just for her testimony today. She watched her direct examination, went through a lot of it. And then he starts asking some interesting questions. And this feels a little bit more for the public than for the jury, because the jury wasn't there trial 1. But he starts asking her, were you coached basically to change your demeanor and how it was from the first trial to how it is today? Because it's very different basically. And maybe giving the jury a little, she's doing much better. To me, that also is kind of an admission that Jackson thinks she's doing much better this trial than she did the last one.
Objection. I'll ask it a different way. What about your demeanor? I'm using probably a poor word, perform.
Mm-hmm.
How you came across your demeanor in the last proceeding.
Sustained.
Did you discuss changing your demeanor in any way, shape, form, or fashion from the last proceeding to this trial? My mistake. From the last proceeding to this trial, was your demeanor ever discussed?
No, I was just told to slow down, answer the question, and answer it to the best of my memory.
Was there any discussion about talking about your background, for instance, your family and your children, and being a sports mom, as you talked about in your direct examination?
No, I believe I did that in the previous one as well.
Was there any discussion about crafting your testimony in any way to suggest a softer approach?
No.
Was there any discussion?
Suggest a softer approach, meaning her approach might have been a little harsh last time, but I got to be honest, regardless of what he says, I think she presented better this time. Now, he is going to affect that during his cross today and even more on Friday, and we'll get to that. But on direct, I definitely think her presentation was better than trial one. You guys agree or disagree with me in the chat?
About how to develop your testimony from beginning to end. Okay.
Sustained.
Did Mr. Brennan ask you about, or let me ask it a different way. Did Mr. Brennan take you through a series of questions, for instance, as almost a test run of questions that you might be asked either on direct examination or cross-examination?
No.
Did you practice your testimony with any member of the DA's office?
No.
Were there any sessions where you sat and were subjected to a cross-examination, like a fake cross-examination or a fake direct examination?
No, that
Anything
wasn't.
like that?
No.
What were the things that stand out in your mind?
So they went over, some of what that prep was like. And that again, was one of the big themes. I think he stayed on this, how many meetings did you have? How long were your meetings? I thought Jackson stayed on it just a touch too long, 4 to 5 hours. What did you talk about? But then I thought this was really effective. A couple different times, he talked through all the connections. Chris Albert, he's on the Canton Select Board. Tom Weeks, you guys go on vacations. Your sister is married to this guy who's a cop, and his brother's a cop, and this guy's a cop as well. And your kids go to school together with Lank, and you do celebrations, vacations, weekends, all that stuff together, and you're very protective of your family. Yes. And Reed is not your family and not as important as your family. And Jenn McCabe said yes. And so while I thought those were good points made by Jackson, I thought Jenn McCabe did a very good job not losing it, not fighting over that stuff. Answer the question yes if the answer is yes. She didn't do that later in cross. But earlier on, I felt like she was at least just saying the answer. Now, very good cross from the defense because you're making your points. So I just thought the cordial back and forth was better for both of them because the defense was getting the points they need. And Jenn McCabe was not looking like somebody who was going to try to climb through the camera at us. Something happened where they took a long break. I don't really know why. Then we get to another big theme, which was your story changing and lying to these agents or officers, which we're going to listen to a big chunk of this. This was one of the most interesting parts of the day today for me. I don't remember it coming out quite like this, trial number one. Maybe I missed it. Maybe it wasn't highlighted enough. I thought it was highlighted very well during trial number two, even with all the breaks. We're going to listen to a lot of this. I'm going to answer some of your questions first. Ashley D said, how would you cross Jenn McCabe more effectively? So I don't know why he's doing more refreshing than impeachment. I would just say, you said this. And if she says no, then you impeach her. Do you remember this day? Do you remember this? There was a court reporter there. This was the question. This was your answer. Instead of refreshing her recollection, like, did you say this the first time around? Will this refresh your recollection? Right? I would just impeach, like, you said this. No, I didn't. The I don't remember stuff, I think you can cut through and get through it by trying to say more of, you said this, you did this, and if you give an inconsistent statement, I'm going to impeach you. I also think that he's very effective in certain areas, and then other ones he's not. And I think some of the ones where he's not as effective are less important. And that's kind of the problem. I think he does such a good job and he's such a good cross-examiner that he wants to hit every little point. One of the things I would say that if I was going to critique it to make it more effective is pick the big battles. Pick the big battles. The smaller ones, hit once and move on. Say your piece and move on. If the judge helps or if it doesn't land, perfectly fine. You still got it in there. You can make the argument later if the jury was listening. But certain ones I think were a little too clunky because they stayed on it too long. I want to hold on that. Jenn getting caught in lying to the FBI agents about how many people she contacted shattered her credibility immediately. Her lie to the feds was epic. What about her saying Matt mentioned the broken taillights? That's new. Yeah, like he had to remind her because she told him. That's again, one of the big themes of tying this all together. In general, how do you deal with a lying witness? You make sure the jury knows they're lying. You make sure a jury knows they're lying. David, can the defense bring up a witness's testimony from the original trial to impeach them / question their testimony? Yes. But the way you say it to me, the way I've always done it is, you did this, you did that, right? Well, you said that. And if she says, no, I didn't say that, but you have to get them to say something inconsistent here to impeach him with a prior inconsistent statement. When they say, I don't remember, that's where it gets hard. And that's why she keeps saying, I don't remember, because then he's got to use it to refresh her recollection. And if she says it doesn't refresh her recollection, then you're kind of stuck and you can't keep asking. But most judges will allow you to read the question and the answer to try to refresh their recollection. Or if they read it and it doesn't refresh their recollection, you can ask, why doesn't it refresh your recollection? Isn't it the same question, the same answer? And you really have to basically get the jury to infer what you're saying. And that's what's so hard. And that's what's so frustrating. There's no perfect way to do it. If she says she doesn't remember over and over again, sometimes you can't get into the question and answer. Sometimes the judge won't let you ask that. But you have to make sure the jury knows how unbelievable it is that a witness is sitting there saying, I don't remember, and no, reading the same exact question and answer does not refresh my recollection. Get the jury to understand how wild that is. Do they understand it? I don't know. What's to stop the jury from going home and rewatching this stuff, i.e. your videos? The judge's admonition every single day, telling them they can't. Jessica, Peter, do you think Brennan is avoiding calling the Bryans? Also, why save Ellie for last? Why close out with them and the ME? I don't know. I think he is going to call the Bryans. I don't know why saving the LE law enforcement for last. I might even try to mix them in, right? Even the car repairman showed up. How convenient. I don't care what anybody says. Judge Cannoni is just making sure Jenn McCabe receives a fair trial. Purely LA. Are JM's prior testimony plus officer notes, records, evidence available to the jury at the end of for review? No. No. The records are not. Prior testimony is not. Just used for impeachment. And that's why you've got to get into them. And I think Jackson is like, I got to do this. I got to do it right. Oh, and here's what I was going to say. Kudos to Jackson and every lawyer who, when it gets really difficult and it's really annoying and you feel it up there and you're like I'm banging my head against the wall, don't quit on it. You keep going. You do the points. You make the points you think are important. Doesn't matter what I think and what I know. You pick the big points. Easy for me to say. Jackson's got his client's life on the line. He knows the case. He's picking the points he thinks are most important. And you can't give up. You can't quit, or the witness wins and your client loses. And if you believe you're fighting for an innocent woman over there, you do what's necessary and you fight and you push, no matter how brutal or how laborious it is, to cross-examine a witness that you believe is lying over and over, that you believe is changing her testimony. Make sure that jury sees that she's changing her testimony. The prosecution is changing their timeline, so the witness has to change their story from last year for Brennan. I agree, and we're going to get to that. That, to me, is some of the best questioning. Where were you? When did you get up and look? When did you send the text message? We're going to get to that. To me, that is incredibly important. I'm going to get back to the video clips here. Let's watch part of this. Great questions. And I'm going to answer more of them as we go.
Kevin Albert, is that right? Okay.
Can you answer that? Is there a connection? Do you have a connection with the Canton Police Department through Kevin Albert?
Not with the police department, but Kevin Albert is Brian Albert's brother.
Right. And Kevin works for whom?
The Canton Police.
Thank you. So you've been interviewed many times by different law enforcement agencies, be they Massachusetts State Police, Canton Police, or otherwise, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Those interviews have not just been over the period of weeks, it's been over the period of weeks and months and even years since this occurred, correct?
Yes.
You were contacted by another law enforcement agency that was not Massachusetts State Police and not Canton Police Department at one point in April of 2023. Do you remember that?
Yes.
I want to talk for a second about that series of interview, or that interview. You were contacted at your residence by these members of this law enforcement agency, correct?
Yes.
All right. Later that same day, you did sit down with those same law enforcement officers for a formal interview.
On that
same day that you were contacted by them, they also went into your home and actually interviewed you, correct?
Yes, it was brief.
All right. Those law enforcement officers identified themselves as being associated with an agency that is not Massachusetts State Police. You understood that?
Yes.
And you understood that they were not involved with Canton Police Department either, correct?
Correct.
Completely separate agency.
I believe he said April of 23. These are the feds, we believe. And this interaction, to me, was very enlightening.
Is that right?
Yes.
During the course of that interview, those officers informed you very specifically, Ms. McCabe, that it is a crime to lie to them, even during an interview, correct?
Yes.
Those law enforcement officers informed you that they were investigating certain circumstances attendant to John O'Keefe's death, correct?
They were very vague on what they were.
Understood.
I don't know what.
Really? You didn't know why they were there. Now, the jury doesn't know what we know. So are they going to believe that she didn't know why they were there? Maybe.
They were investigating.
But you did understand that it was having something to do with your involvement at 34 Fairview on January 28th, 29th, 2022.
Yeah.
As a witness or otherwise.
Sustained as to certain terminologies.
Sure. Let me see if I can rephrase that, Ms. McCabe. You were aware of the subject matter of their interview, right? They weren't interviewing about a car you bought last year, correct?
Correct.
They were interviewing you basically about what you're testifying to here, correct?
When I first spoke with them, the conversation was pretty vague.
But the subject matter, vague or specific, was about this subject matter.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. They first contacted you telephonically, called you on the phone. Is that right?
Actually, they walked up to my car.
They walked up to your car.
Yes.
Okay, that was the very first introduction, correct?
Yes.
At that point, they had not identified themselves, correct?
They didn't know.
All right, and at that point, you told them that you were not Jennifer McCabe. They asked you who you were, and you said, I'm Nicole.
I thought they were like selling something. So I was like, oh, no, I'm not the homeowner.
Fair enough, fair enough. However,
And again, some people could take that as a lie. Other people might think that's totally reasonable, right? Somebody shows up at your house like, I'm not going to tell you who I am. My wife says all the time. My wife says she answers the door and says, oh, no, when my dad gets home, I'll let you know, or I'm not the homeowner. I'll have to wait till he gets home, or just doesn't answer the door at all. So that happens all the time.
after you said, I'm not Jennifer McCabe, you walked into the house, they then called you on the phone.
Yes.
They were
Correct.
still sitting outside your house.
I don't know where they were, but they did call me.
They were close by.
I'm not aware.
Well, the call came almost immediately after you walked back in the house, correct?
I'm not sure how much time had passed.
Give me an idea. It wasn't an hour. It was
No, it was
5 to
soon
10
after. I'm just not sure. I can't tell you where they were located. I'm sorry.
okay. They told you that they would, at that point, they identified themselves as being law enforcement agents, correct?
When they called me, yes.
And they told you at that time that they were not with Canton Police. You knew at least they were not with Canton Police Department. They were not with the troopers with Massachusetts State Police, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And they told you that they would like to have an interview with you. They'd like to have a sit down talk with you, correct?
Yes.
You told them that you would be willing to submit to an interview, but you needed about 10 minutes to get ready, correct?
Yes.
You ultimately did allow them into your home, and you did sit down for a formal interview.
10 minutes to get ready. That's important, right? 10 minutes to get ready. That can mean a couple things. Brush your teeth, which she says, do your hair, whatever. Clean up your house, or to get ready for the interview, to get your story straight, maybe, right? Or to get prepared mentally for what's about to happen. There's all sorts of things that get prepared can mean. So how do we find out what get prepared means? Well, based on her actions, right?
With them, correct?
Yes. Brief, but yes.
And it was during that formal interview inside the home that it was explained to you that it would be a crime for you to lie to them on any material issue, correct?
Yes.
During the course of your interview, your husband, Matt McCabe, came home. Is that right?
Yes.
As these law enforcement agents continued to question you, as law enforcement officers continued to question you at some point, you informed them that you did not feel comfortable with any further questioning and you suspended the interview, correct?
Yes.
Before
Did you hear that? I'm going to listen to that again.
to question you, as law enforcement officers continued to question you at some point, you informed them that you did not feel comfortable with any further questioning and you suspended the interview, correct?
Yes.
Isn't that interesting? Now, I don't know if it's going to come up later, but if I was Jackson, because they've already talked about a lot of her police interviews with Proctor and Lank and Buchanan and, all these guys that she's talked to. Serif, she's talked to all these law enforcement officers and she can't remember, she talked to so many of them. She doesn't remember what she said to one or the other, which is her play because she is inconsistent. There's tons of inconsistencies and Jackson's trying to methodically go through them. What I would ask, which I know the answer would be, I don't remember, but what I would ask is your friend, Sergeant Lank, talked to him a couple of times, right? Did you ever suspend an interview with him? Did you ever feel uncomfortable talking to him? What about Serif? What about Buchanan? What about all these Canton PD officers? Did you ever feel uncomfortable talking to them and suspend the interview? No. Just with these agents you lied to, right? I would start asking that question if I was Jackson about each one of the the officers that she was interviewed by. Because again, if you're trying to build conspiracy, if you're trying to build they're all in on it, everybody knows everybody, Karen's an outsider, we're insiders, that goes in perfectly. These agents were outsiders. I'm uncomfortable. I'm not talking to you. I'm only talking to my friends who can help me. That tracks with their story. I would ask those questions to Jenn McCabe as you went along in her cross-examination, which is on Friday because there's no court tomorrow. But don't worry, folks. Hit the like button because we've got something special coming tomorrow. Something that is always requested that I am looking forward to. So make sure you're subscribed and the reminder bell is hit. She's not going to want to miss a video that drops tomorrow.
Before leaving, however, those same law enforcement officers asked you if you had contacted anyone in those 10 minutes when you indicated, I need 10 minutes to get ready, between the time they called you and the time that they showed up and came inside your house, correct?
Yes.
You told them that you had contacted your husband, Matt McCabe,
Yes.
which is why he came home, right?
Yes.
And you told them that you had called Carrie Roberts, before they interviewed you, correct? At that moment.
I'm not 100% sure, but if you have it, it's not, it's,
She still doesn't remember who she called, right? Her husband and Carrie Roberts, though, is who she told law enforcement. It's also probably hard for her to remember who she told law enforcement she called, since that's not a true answer. And it's hard to remember a lie. And here's what else I'll say. Carrie Roberts' explanation of her lie or misunderstanding or, whatever hers was, I thought he said heard, not with my own ears, or somebody else told me, not from Karen, whatever. That was a better explanation to me than this. There's almost no explanation for this. Somebody said, is it true Morrissey won't allow perjury charges? I have no idea, but I'd be shocked if he pushed perjury on, his star witnesses here. PMD said, have you ever seen a defendant go to sidebar like Karen? Seems very strange. Yes, I've seen it all over the place. They have the right to be there. They have the right to listen. Some want to. Some have listening devices, different ways to do it.
seems like something I would do, but if you have it, could show me.
Absolutely.
Lita, I agree. So by the way, there's going to be some sidebars here and stuff that I'm going to skip through. I agree. I think that would be a very effective question. Do you deny saying it? He needs to mix that in.
Just a moment, Your Honor.
Okay.
Briefly.
Yes.
First, I'm going to ask you, Ms. McCabe, if you direct your attention, full paragraph, going to yourself. Paragraphs refresh your recollection as to whether or not, as to what you told those agents initially. I'm sorry, what you told those officers initially from that other law enforcement agency, about who you contacted in that 10-minute interval.
Yes, I told them.
And you told them that you had contacted your husband, Matt McCabe,
Yes.
and Carrie Roberts.
Correct.
I want to stick with that for just a quick second. One of the first calls you made after being contacted by these other law enforcement officers from a different agency, one of the first calls you made was to Carrie Roberts. Is that right?
She was the first one.
That's what I'm asking. One of the first two calls you made, your husband,
Right.
come home, there's law enforcement outside my door. I'm guessing is what you said, correct?
I don't remember my exact words now, but I did ask him to come home. Correct.
And
Yes.
Carrie Roberts.
Okay. Yes.
You wanted to let Ms. Roberts know that you had been contacted by certain officers from a different agency, correct?
I was curious if they had already been to her.
That was my next question.
Yeah.
You also wanted to find
So this comment, I give the same credence to Jackson I do to Brendan. I think misstatements happen because there is just so much in this case that you can't say, and you've got to say one way and not the other. So it does happen when you've got so much going on. People want to think it's nefarious when Hank does it and not when Jackson, or vice versa. It's nefarious when Jackson does it and not Hank. I would just say be consistent. And from my perspective, I think there's going to be misstatements. I don't think anybody's trying to say the first trial, but it's going to come up. It's going to happen because it was a trial, and the preceding word is something that we're going to have to be using. So things like that are going to happen.
find out have these
By the way, if you want to see some skillful lawyering and using words like Jackson is here, he's sticking to just those two people. So Carrie was one of the first two. I don't know that that's actually true, but he got Jenn McCabe to agree with it. So maybe it is true. I should say, I don't know that Jackson actually confirmed that before trial, because we have all these other people she called. What is the order? Does he know from her phone records? Interesting.
law enforcement officers from this different agency contacted her, correct?
Yes, because typically if you
Yes,
enter
yes, no.
uptown, she's
Cody, I don't think that he said federal agent. I know he said agent, but I don't think he said federal agent. Also, the jury doesn't know there's first trial. Something is wrong. Yeah, they definitely know there's a first trial, unfortunately, because it just continues to be said. It's said again today, and Judge Cannoni calls them up to the bench and is like, please stop saying that.
Ms. McCabe, yes or no?
oh sorry.
I will say the witnesses are doing a pretty good job, and that might be something that they're doing a Zoom call about. Don't call it a first trial, call it a first proceeding. Don't call it federal agents, call it law enforcement officers from a different agency. So that's the type of stuff sometimes you do on Zoom calls right before a witness testifies.
Trying to
That's
explain.
okay.
I'm sorry.
Is that why you contacted her, to find out if in fact they had contacted her before you? Yes or no?
Yes.
And you also wanted to find out what she told them, if she had been contacted by them, correct? That was your motive in calling her.
No.
So you just wanted to find out, had she been contacted? But
Yes.
if she had said yes, you weren't going to say, and what the hell did they say? What did they ask you?
Well, I can't say what I would have answered, what I would have asked her, but I know I was calling to see if they had been there. Yes.
That was your
correct.
intent.
I called to ask her if they had been there. Yes.
So that was your intent, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a good job. Good job by him. She didn't freak out. It's a bad answer for her. She answered it. I honestly think that has a better effect on the jury than when you really try to fight it sometimes and the bad answer ends up coming out. John, I don't know the answer to this question. I think it depends on the person, whether it's, more effective last time, more effective this time. I definitely think the investigation and the cops are the worst evidence for the Commonwealth. So maybe saving it for later, you get the jury on your side to where maybe they don't think it's that big of a deal because at this point they believe Karen admitted I hit him. Maybe that's the strategy. I don't know.
Your motive in calling Carrie Roberts at that moment before your interview was to ensure that your story would line up with her story, Ms. McCabe. Isn't that right?
No, that is not.
You wanted to find out if she had talked to these particular law enforcement officers and what she had told them so that your story could somehow align or it could inform how you responded to questions that they asked you. Isn't that true?
That's not true. We both know what happened. We don't have to have a story. There is no story. There's what happened, and that's it.
So if that's true, Ms. McCabe,
Mhm.
you have no reason to call Carrie and ask her if she'd been contacted by these law enforcement agents because it's just the truth, correct?
We're going through this whole experience together. We call each other about everything.
There would
That's
be no
nothing
reason
more
to-
than that. I'm sorry.
Let her finish her answer. Go ahead, Ms. McCabe. You can finish that.
There's nothing more than me calling and saying, hey, did they come to your house? That's what we did when the media showed up, when Ms. Reed's private investigator showed up. We just give each other the heads up. Hey, somebody's coming. Because we're just,
That's the worst she looked. She had to slip in. The media showed up. The private investigator showed up. It's like, you were doing good. Like, stay calm. Stay cool, calm, collected, and it doesn't land as much. But then when you're really pushing here and private investigators and media and all this stuff, the jury's going to start thinking now, are they going to think good for you and feel bad for you? Maybe. Are they going to think negatively of you? Maybe.
it's like normal moms. We're not used to this.
And that's helpful in making sure that the stories she tells are consistent with the stories you tell to different law enforcement agencies, correct?
No, we are not telling stories.
So let her finish. You said no what?
I said, no, we're not telling stories. We don't have to compare.
And if in fact, what we were telling you is just
We don't have to compare, but that's like exactly what you did. I would have just said we're not telling stories. Again, I'm nitpicking here with individual words, but that stuff's important.
true. There'd be no reason for you to inquire about who's contacted her when. There'd be no reason.
There's no inquiring. It's like when when the ice cream truck was at the street next door and I'm saying, did the ice cream truck come? It's really that simple.
So you asked a question.
So it's the same thing when the feds show up to question you and you're uncomfortable and you send them away. It's the same thing to say, did the ice cream truck come by your house? Again, when she tries to push and force, I think that she loses it. I think that she loses it.
Not about ice cream truck.
An argumentative question, and she responded in kind. Next question.
Thank you.
So in case you didn't hear what Judge Cannoni just said there, she said it was an argumentative question and she responded in kind. Number one, don't say that in front of a jury while I'm standing there. Don't do it. Because I would ask for a sidebar and say, Judge, can you tell them to disregard what you just said? Judge would hate me for it probably, but I wouldn't care. You cannot be saying stuff like that in front of the jury. It was an argumentative question. She responded in kind. Number one. Number two, regardless of what a witness does, a lawyer should still act appropriately. Regardless of what a lawyer does, a witness should still act appropriately. And that's what the judge is there to make sure everybody acts appropriately. And the judge is absolutely right when she tells Mr. Jackson, don't make those comments, Mr. Jackson, between the questions, like maybe you'll answer it this time. Don't make those comments. She's right to say that. And if you're going to make those comments as a lawyer, she should reprimand you in front of the jury. He said it at the end of the day, like, I can't end on this. We'll get there. She was right to point that out and say, jury, disregard that. But she's doing the same thing when she makes comments like that. That's exactly what she keeps reprimanding both lawyers on both sides for doing, but especially Jackson makes a lot of those comments and he knows she's going to tell him to stop. She's doing the same thing.
You also testified in your direct examination, staying with Ms. Roberts for just a second, about a timeline that you and Ms. Roberts put together, correct?
Yes.
That's another example of the two of you talking about your own perceptions and comparing and contrasting those perceptions and putting it down in front of you, correct?
No,
Yes or no?
it's a no. Can I explain or no?
I'm sure Mr. Brennan will have follow-up questions. After you gave that
The little smirk, I don't know. Was the jury watching?
answer to those law enforcement officers at that separate law enforcement agency, they asked you, was there anyone else that you contacted in that 10-minute period before we got a chance to talk to you? And your answer was no, correct?
Correct.
And that was a lie, correct?
It wasn't a lie. No.
Was it true?
I had
Was it
I-
the truth or a lie?
It wasn't a lie.
Okay, so it was the truth. You had not spoken to any other person between the time they contacted you telephonically and you said, I need 10 minutes, and then they came in the door. During that part of time, you didn't talk to anybody else or contact anybody else other than Matt McCabe, Kerry Roberts. Now you're testifying that was a true statement.
I can't answer that yes or no.
It's pretty binary. Had you talked, well, let me ask you this. In point of fact, you did talk to other people. You contacted others in addition to Matt McCabe and Kerry Roberts, correct? Yes or no?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so when you said no to the answer, did you contact anyone other than Matt and Kerry? That would be, by definition, Ms. McCabe, a lie, correct?
No.
It's not a lie? Is there some shade of lie that I'm not aware of?
It's the way you're asking the question. If
Okay,
I could
let me ask it a
explain,
different
if I could explain,
Let me ask
it
you
will make more sense to you.
So he's not giving up on this. And this I thought was a good point. I actually think he did get there. Again, it was hard. It was clunky, but he got there. Can the feds bring charges for our jury for perjury? Yeah, they could. There's a statute right on point when they come and investigate you and you lie to them about something like this. They could if they wanted to. Will they? I don't know.
The agents asked you, let me go over this one more time, then I'm going to move on. The agents asked you, in fact, did you contact anyone between the time
That's where he said the agents asked you.
Let me go over this one more time, then I'm going to move on. The agents asked you, in fact, did you contact anyone between the time we called you and set up the interview and the 10 minutes before we walked in the door? They asked you that question, correct?
The objection sustained. Watch the choice of language.
I'm sorry. I meant the law enforcement agency. That law enforcement agency, the members of that law enforcement agency contacted you. Sorry, they asked you who you had contacted between the time they first telephoned you and walked in the door 10 minutes later, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Data point number one. Data point number two, you told them Matt and Kerry, correct?
Correct.
You had actually contacted, they then asked you, did you contact anyone else other than Matt and Kerry, correct?
Correct.
And you said no. Is that correct?
At that moment, I said no. Yes.
Correct.
That is not true, right? That's tough. And again, I think this was well done. He stayed on it. He even said, I'm going to try this one more time. The void. That's interesting. I didn't even think about that. Are they trying to plant some seeds with the jury? I don't know. They shouldn't. It would be inappropriate to plant those seeds when you know it's inadmissible. But I don't know if the jury's starting to pick up on that.
No, at that moment, because they had just come, at that moment, I said no. Yes. No, at that moment, because they had just come in my house.
Only one person can talk at a time.
You said the word no.
She was finishing her answer.
I had said no because I was in a situation where there are two officers from a different agent had come in, were asking me questions, or they had said, can I come in and ask you questions? At first, I thought they were selling something. Then they identified themselves. I just dropped my kids off at school. Going to be completely honest. I hadn't brushed my teeth. So I kind of made some phone
Objection, Your Honor.
calls.
This is
That-
not
that's it. So next question.
Thank you. Ms. McCabe.
Me, I almost would have let her keep going if I was Jackson. He objected to stop it. To me, it sounded like she was giving a reason why she lied to them. They just showed up. They walked into my house. I made some phone calls. I didn't know what was going on, so I lied. It seemed like she was literally making excuses for lying. Maybe I'm wrong. That's what it felt like she was doing there. Jackson objected because she was explaining herself. Interesting.
Okay, after you said no, that you hadn't contacted anybody else, those two law enforcement officers from that separate agency who had told you it was a crime to lie to them, they left, right?
Yes.
Subsequent to that, Mr. McCabe, your husband, objection.
Sustained.
They left you their card so you could call them if need be, correct?
Yes, they did.
And you in fact did call them back, correct?
Yes, I did.
Without telling me the content of the conversation you had, did you have a conversation with Mr. McCabe? Objection.
Sustained.
Did you call them back and say, I'm calling you back because my husband told me that I lied to you and I'd better clear that lie up?
So sustained. Jurors, remember I told you before that only answers to questions are evidence? Be mindful of that.
Maybe
Next, yes.
There she is again. And Albie said, Judge Canoni repeats, questions aren't evidence, but jurors also judge credibility. If a witness answers no, but jurors don't believe it, is it evidence? Yes. Well, what the lawyer says is not evidence, but the witness's credibility can be taken into account. It's not evidence, but it can absolutely affect the verdict. So he asked the question. We're going to back it up and listen to it one more time because these were two of the worst judge moments I've seen from Judge Canoni in this trial. The comment she made before and then this comment, which if Hank Brennan would have objected and said, sidebar judge, can you instruct the jury that those questions are not in evidence? Fine, that's fair game. She can make her decision to do that. But to just do it, here's balloons, but to just do it on her own accord in the middle of the criminal defense attorney cross-examining a witness, ugh, horrible, horrible, can't happen, shouldn't happen. Once again, I would go, now she's right. What she said is right. I don't have a problem with what she said. It's correct. It's the fact that she's injecting herself into this cross-examination. That's the problem. If she really has a problem with it, she calls him up at the sidebar and says, don't do it again, or I'm going to say that, Mr. Jackson.
And say, I'm calling you back because my husband told me that I lied to you, and I better clear that lie up.
So sustained. Jurors, remember I told you before that only answers to questions are evidence? Be mindful of that.
Maybe
Next, yes.
Is she going to do that if there's a sustained objection on one of Brennan's questions? Because my guess is she's not. Peter, without knowing why Brennan's objecting, what are the most common you're seeing? Very frustrating, especially today on cross. Argumentative, improper impeachment, hearsay, speculation. There's a lot of them mixed throughout. So it's without going on like an individual one-by-one basis, it's hard to tell, exactly which one is which. Which is why it'd be nice if they could say it. So then there's a sidebar we're going to skip here.
May I?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. You ultimately called these officers back, correct?
Yes.
And you explained to them that you had been untruthful with them, correct?
I explained that I had forgotten to mention a couple of people that I had reached out to.
You had forgotten. Is that your testimony?
Yes.
You had forgotten. You remembered Matt and you remembered Carrie.
She literally was like, I need 10 minutes, makes the calls, they show up, and she forgot who she called in that 10 minutes. That's what she's saying there. Is the jury thinking that and, writing down the timeline? I don't know. But that's what she's saying. This is where, if I knew nothing about this case, she would have lost me. I actually think she did okay up until now. And even some of the things he caught her in was okay up until now. This is where she would have completely lost me. And I would have been like, whoa. Now he needs to highlight this agency is different. These were outsiders. He did say not Can PD, not whatever. I would have asked a couple more questions. Those two officers from another agency were not part of your family. Your kids weren't friends with them. You had no connection to them at all. Not even your sister's, cousin's, friend's, boyfriend's mom is related to them, right? They were outsiders. I would have hammered that point home that those guys were outsiders and she didn't want to talk to them.
But you had forgotten the others that you had just contacted maybe 30 minutes before.
Yes.
There were 5 people that you contacted.
I contacted Matt.
Let's go through them.
Yeah.
Yes, no.
I know 4 off the top of my head.
Okay, let's go through them.
Okay.
You contacted your husband, correct?
Yes.
You contacted Carrie Roberts, correct?
Yes.
You contacted Peggy O'Keefe, correct?
Yes.
Then, Ms. McCabe, you contacted the district attorney's office, correct?
My witness advocate.
The district attorney's office.
My witness advocate who works
Miss-
for the district attorney's
Thank you,
office.
Ms. McCabe.
Yes.
And you also left out that you contacted Brian Albert himself, correct?
Yes, my brother-in-law.
For some reason, your brother-in-law, who's the 30-year Boston police detective, correct?
Yes.
And on whose lawn John O'Keefe was found dead or dying. Objection.
I'll allow that.
Correct?
Yes.
For some reason, you did not want these officers.
She didn't call him the night all this happened. She didn't go in his house to ask him what's going on until an officer told her to. But before she talks to these 2 agents, she calls him. I would have slipped that question in too. Brian Albert, who you didn't call the night John O'Keefe died, but you did call him here. Again, I'm Monday morning quarterbacking. I'm not saying anybody sucks. All these lawyers are great. They're good trial lawyers. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying to connect, to make sure to hammer those points home to people, not like most of us in the chat who already saw trial 1 and know the timeline and know how all of this works, right? I'd highlight some of those facts. All right, then he asks about, are we done here? A little bit more. I think I'm almost done here.
Officers to know that you had communicated specifically with Brian Albert, the homeowner, just before you talked to them, correct?
No, incorrect.
There was some reason that was important enough for you to lie about that, even though you had been admonished that it's a crime to lie about that to those officers, correct?
Incorrect. I didn't lie to them. I had forgotten who I had called.
And all of a sudden you had an epiphany.
That's where, in my opinion, you have more evidence that just like can't be true. with the Carrie Roberts stuff, I misunderstood. That's reasonable. You forgot some, but not others. And you forgot 2 minutes after you called them. Like that to me seems completely unreasonable personally. Okay. A little bit more.
Epiphany right after they walked out the door?
I had forgotten who I had called.
And all of a sudden you had an epiphany right after they walked out the door?
Yes. Matt said, who have you spoken to?
Objection.
So Matt asking who you spoke to, you remembered. But the agents asking who you spoke to, you didn't remember. And she said yes to I had an epiphany. You don't this is a free tip, okay? Free tip, not legal advice. If you're on the stand, don't admit you just had an epiphany, okay? Usually that doesn't bode well for you. Ask Higgins, he asks about Higgins and Albert squaring off. She says they were play fighting. I don't think that's as important as a factor, but some people do. Then we get back to Fairview. She saw the Jeep. It was Higgins's Jeep. She didn't see if there was a snowplow on it. And then she starts talking about where things were parked. She told Proctor that Reed's car was by the driveway. She said, no, I didn't. He's like, so is Proctor's report wrong? She said, it's outside the door. I could see it through the front door. But again, that was good enough. Did you tell Proctor this? No. So is his report wrong? I'm not going to answer that or objection or whatever happened. You made your point if you're Jackson. Proctor's report says something very different than what she's saying here. You don't need to belabor that point over and over again. And I think he made the point and he moved on. We'll look at a little bit about where she says her car was actually parked.
Do you remember exactly what you said to Trooper Proctor about the location of the SUV in front of the house?
I know what I said, yes.
Okay, what exactly did you say?
I said the car was straight out front of the front door. When I was looking out the front door, it was straight ahead.
Is it true that what you actually said, Ms. McCabe, is that you first observed the vehicle parked on the street by the driveway facing in the direction toward Chapman? Objection.
I'll allow it. Is that what you said?
Those are not my words, no.
Okay, next question.
To me, very clear. That's what Proctor's report says. And no, just wait till Proctor takes the stand, right? This thing ain't over. The family was all talking. Jackson says getting the story straight. She just says it was family talking. They did get together before the grand jury testimony. I thought that was a good job by Jackson to get that out. And again, in and out, in and out, in and out. Asks about the bedlam at their house. They quibble where everybody was and whether or not they should have woken up. I thought she was doing well early on. And then now is kind of in the part where she really starts arguing about, whether she woke him up because something bad happened. And then there were some questions about this. Jennifer McCabe, no dog in the room. Brian, dog was in the room. Cy, dog sleeps in the room. She doesn't remember the dog, didn't see the dog. Dog wasn't barking, didn't hear it when she walked in the house, walked up the stairs, walked in the room, woke them up. When she opened the unlocked door and all the chaos is outside all these people. She admitted the dog doesn't do well with other dogs. He couldn't get her to admit it doesn't do well with other people or strangers. But that's a huge inconsistency to me. Was the dog there? Was it not? How could you not have noticed the dog? They talk a little bit about Chloe, 70-pound German Shepherd, et cetera, et cetera. Then we get into Julie Nagel and how Jennifer McCabe had Julie Nagel screenshot a text message and send it to her. Just another example of, colluding with another witness, Jackson's trying to say here. She said she needed that screenshot for her own personal use. And then that's where handing her the paper, look at it. I don't remember. They had to stipulate to the time. And later when she tried to argue it again, Jackson's like, don't worry about it, Miss McCabe. We have already all stipulated to what the time was. But I thought a little too clunky with the pages and how important it is when you already got the information you needed. You got her to say that I got that screenshot for my own personal use. Move on. All right. I'm going to play a little snippet of, I'm so sorry. That's different than my memory. I know it's on the paper, and we'll just get a little taste of that, which happened right before the lunch break. And then I'm going to answer a bunch of questions before we talk about after lunch.
Is the page available
I'm
before
sorry,
this?
just a yes or no. Does that refresh your recollection about anything that we've been discussing?
It's just what we've discussed. It doesn't
Okay.
really refresh.
So it does not refresh her memory. Next question.
I don't think that's what she said.
That's what you
Yes,
said?
that's what I said.
That was her answer.
That does not refresh your recollection.
Objection.
That was her answer. Next
As
question.
a lawyer, that's astonishing. It's like it says the answer right there. How does that not refresh your recollection?
Mr. Jackson.
May I approach? Next.
And this is just to get a little taste of how frustrating and hard it is. By the way, we hit the 1 hour mark right over time. Everybody hit the like button. We got the last one to 15,000 likes. Can we get this video to what's a good number? 17,000 likes? Everybody hits the like right now. We'll get 17,000 likes, which would be awesome. We're going to go some overtime today because I got a lot of questions to get through and I want to answer them all. I don't have another appointment after this one like I did last night. I went on NBC Boston 10. If you saw it, let me know in the comment section.
Thank you.
Take a look at the bottom of that page and tell me if that refreshes your recollection about anything we were just discussing.
There was so much of this today. I just wanted to show you a couple minutes of it so you could get the vibe in case you didn't watch it. She's literally looking at exactly what has the question and answer or the answer that he's looking for on it. That's what she's looking at. That's like saying, did you say this? And here's something that said, I did say this. That's what she's looking at before she gives this answer. Now, will a jury know that? That's one of the lawyer's jobs to make sure they do.
Yeah?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. McCabe, having seen these, does this refresh your recollection about what we were just discussing concerning that conversation?
Regarding me asking Julie Nagel for the time?
Correct.
Yes, it does.
Okay. And what time did that was attendant to a screenshot that you asked for, correct?
Yes.
And that time was what?
Objection.
Do you remember the
Can I look at the paper? I was reading everything. I didn't
So
look at
the
exact
question is
time.
whether you remember the
Oh, do I remember it? I don't remember the exact time, but I can read it off.
The judge is also not helping with this. After seeing it on the paper, does that help you remember what time it was? Not, do you have an independent, they're conflating the issue. It's not, do you have an independent memory from reading that paper of what time it was? That's not the question. That's not how refreshing your recollection works. It's, you review the paper, now do you remember? It's like, here are the answers to the test, A, B, C, D. Do you remember the answers? Oh, I can't remember. Look at this page. Okay, A, B, C, D. Do you remember the answers to the test? Yes, they're A, B, C, D. Not, did you remember the answers before you looked at the test? That's not what this is. And the judge is almost giving her this out inappropriately because that's not how refreshing your recollection works. It's not, do you remember before you read? Now that you've read and saw the answer on the paper, what's the answer?
The paper. That's different than a memory.
That's different.
Time was what?
Objection.
Do you remember the time?
Can I look at the paper? I was reading everything. I didn't
So
look at
the
the exact
question is
time.
whether you remember the
Oh, do I remember it? I don't remember the exact time, but I can read it off the paper. That's different than a memory.
That's different. Next question.
So this does not reflect your recollection of the time that was reflected on that screenshot.
I can read the time, but in my memory.
Not my question. I have to do it this way.
Okay, sorry.
Does it refresh your recollection as you sit here, having read this, as to the time that was reflected on that screenshot?
I don't, sitting here today, the only reason I know there's a time is because of what's on that paper.
But you did ask for a screenshot from Ms. Nagel, correct?
Yes, I
And that-
did.
And that screenshot said something to the effect of outside. Is that right?
What's wrong?
Just that question. The screenshot said something about outside.
Is that right?
So then they get into what it actually said here, outside, whatever, whatever. She does this a ton. To me, a lawyer, that looks horrible because I know that she is purposely not allowing her memory to be refreshed. And yeah, I agree. Give it back to her, Siobhan. I would do it 50 times, Judge. She can look at it all day to refresh her recollection. Now, she's not supposed to read off it as she answers. That's fine. But I don't know why she can't take another look at it. All right. We are at the lunch break at trial. We're just over an hour. I'm going to hit some rapid fire questions here. Mom to 8. What, if anything, was Chloe doing when she busted in the house in the dark? Not barking, not running around, not jumping on Jennifer McCabe. Rate the most abrasive lawyers in front of the jury. AJ, Spyro, Brian Steele, Daryl Brooks. Daryl Brooks definitely number one. A lot of the pro se litigants are abrasive. Sometimes has a negative connotation. I definitely think Alan Jackson is one of the most assertive. I think Alessi's pretty assertive too. I didn't feel like Brian Steele or Spyro really were. Morrissey was, certainly. Charlotte. Peter, do you think that Brennan was as shocked as we all were when she admitted calling several people during the 10 minutes she needed? My mouth was on the floor was Brennan's. I have no idea what he knows and what he doesn't know. That was a huge deal to me. Huge deal. Just about credibility. Just about her credibility. And again, why'd she do that in that scenario? She didn't do that with any of the other cops, any of the Boston cops, right? Can AJ recall Jenn to the stand after the investigators to testify about what she told them? I'm not sure what you mean. He can recall her. I think he's going to be able to get a lot of these inconsistencies out with Proctor. You put this in your report. Did Jenn McCabe say that, or did you make it up? Are your reports accurate, or are you going to admit all your reports are completely just made up and wrote whatever you want down? ZHY. So PD found it necessary / appropriate to send a civilian into a dark house, but not worth entering investigating themselves. Am I misrepresenting? You said it, not me. Linda, Jenn went in the house, walked upstairs, went into the police officer's house, and one, Chloe didn't bark once, and the cop didn't pull a gun and shoot at the intruder. I call BS. I mean, I don't think he's going to, if he wakes up and he sees his sister-in-law, I don't necessarily know that, but I get what you're saying. Mom to 8, when she was being so evasive and Aunt Bev said she wasn't going to let her read 217 pages, she stopped that. It seemed like it gave Jenn an out. So I don't know if that already happened. By the way, how crazy is it? 227. That's how many pages it was. Number one, most judges are not going to say, okay, go ahead and read 227 pages. They're not necessarily going to allow that. So I don't think that was that big of a deal, or that Judge Cannoni was doing something most judges wouldn't do. But I think the point was, it's not in there. It's not in there. We're going to get to that argument, whether it was semantics or whether it was a good point here in a second. Peter, in your experience, what's up, Azam? Regarding a mistrial, how does a lay juror differentiate when a lawyer says in the first proceeding versus in the first trial? I'm not really impressed with AJ today. For me personally, it was a tough day. It was a tough cross. I got to be honest. She's using all the outs. Judge Cannoni is helping her. Hank Brennan is helping McCabe, which again, that's his job. It's his witness. So I don't have a problem with that. Cannoni, I have a problem with how she acted today. I don't think they differentiated. I think they know there was a first trial at this point. That would be my guess. Netwoman, what type of case or situation would require sequestering the jury? Also, do you know why no court tomorrow? Thanks for dailies. I don't know why there's no court tomorrow, but don't worry. There's something you're not going to want to miss tomorrow. That's number one. Number two, usually sequestration, it's high profile cases. If you don't think a jury can avoid it, et cetera, but usually a criminal defendant wants to sequester the jury. And in this case, that's the opposite of what the defense wants to do. That's the real reason I think this jury is not sequestered, because I think there probably was enough to sequester the jury in this case, but the defense didn't want it. Priya, should AJ ask JM if she's looking at Brennan, waiting for an objection when she doesn't want to answer, to tip the jury of the pattern, dissuade tactic? It would probably be inappropriate. The judge would probably scold him for it, but he could say, why do you keep looking at him? Something like that. I don't think he should. Colette, would it not be okay to ask Jenn how she thinks Karen should be acting if she thought her BF was seriously injured, or not a good idea because she may not like the answer? Thanks for all you do. Yeah, I would not ask that, because God forbid she comes up with a really good answer that the jury agrees with. VS, what, if anything, can be done about possible new precedent being set due to some of the violations that have happened in this case, like Crumbly did? That's a little too overbroad of a question. If there was like a specific, you think this one ruling or this one thing happening could create precedent, I'm not seeing a ton of it, honestly. Adam Lerman, where is the proof of collision? Do they have Apple Healthcare data to show that he was hit by a car? I didn't see that from Whiffen. If they can't prove he was hit by the car, then not guilty, right? I would agree. And I believe Hank Brennan would say it's coming. I believe the defense would say it ain't ever going to happen. Jen A. Forrest Gump, is that what this is? Would this whole thing be different if any of these witnesses from that night lawyered up to speak with police? I don't think so. I mean, if they didn't talk to the cops, maybe Karen never gets arrested, because I think it was based on everything this group of witnesses said. Candy, question, Peter, could Karen have refused the blood alcohol test at the hospital? What would you advise your firm to do? Pulled over while drinking, refused test. Thank you. So in Florida, you cannot advise somebody to commit a crime, and it is a crime to refuse in Florida. So we are not allowed to advise people to refuse. If you're looking at research, refusals usually end in better plea deals and trials than when you do it and you blow over. But when you blow under, that does better than a refusal. It depends. If it's medical treatment and it had to be taken from that, she wasn't going to be able to refuse. If it was just taken to test her blood alcohol levels, she could refuse. I think because of the Section 12, they were treating her and could take her blood. I haven't looked through the medical records, so I can't see that specifically for this case. Nicole, things that seem clunky now or that aren't coming out the way the defense intended it due to the new order of witnesses can be fixed or remedied in their case in chief? No, some of it probably can, some of it probably can't. Boston Ed, Peter, huge fan of the show. I sent you the Boston Dictionary a while back. Just curious if you got it. I did. It may help you understand the Beantown beatdown that's about to happen on this case. Yes, I did. Thank you for that. Katrina, why didn't AJ impeach her on prior inconsistent statements? She weaseled out on her prior statements. Some help from the judge, some refreshing recollection, some saying, I don't know, which again, you can use I don't know a lot as a lawyer too, kind of in a similar way that you can use prior inconsistent statements. It doesn't hit as hard though. Blind might, but I do think that he is doing a decent job. Peter, if you're a juror, would you think the judge is helping the prosecution witness and then take that out to the jury room? I don't know if they would notice. I don't think it's obvious. Caitlin Healy, I may be obvious to some people on the outside. Can the defense call her again after law enforcement testify to impeach her testimony again, since some of it's not in evidence for this trial yet? They can recall her. They may be able to impeach her with some stuff. I don't expect them to. Summertime. If Cellbrite fixed their format, won't that require all defendants who were convicted for forensic cell evidence to be retried? No, not necessarily. Some maybe, though. Some maybe. Aaron, lawyer, none of us know the judge personally, but do you feel or can you see where she just doesn't like AJ? I feel she doesn't like having a West Coast lawyer in her courtroom. Do you think it's hurting Karen Reed in any way? Maybe slightly hurting her, yes. It wouldn't be abnormal for a judge to not like an LA lawyer or a New York lawyer or a Miami lawyer or whatever. Stuff like that happens sometimes. I don't know how obvious it is to the jurors. You guys would have to tell me that. To me, it would be frustrating and annoying as a lawyer, but not necessarily like she hates him. Did you see the video of Brennan making eyes and shaking his head at Bev during the Arc of Voir? No, I did not see that. Curious if you think the prosecution truly feels M2 is on the table, or do you just want to ensure she's found guilty of the manslaughter? If they were hooked up to a lie detector, I would think it's just count 2, but I don't know. Sorry, I can't get in their mind. Sandra, Jenn has never given a consistent story in police reports under oath. It has evolved since day one. Can't AJ impeach her prior to testimony? I think he is. It seems like a lot of people don't think he is at all. I don't think it's perfect. I do think it's clunky, but he is getting some points to say the story is changing. It's not perfect. She's definitely using the I don't remember, I don't recall, etc. More this time. Sounds like it's working. Netwoman. Were there body-worn cameras? I don't think so. Jen's testimony is that Karen said I hit him to so many PD, and a lot of first responders have said it so far too. Bella's mom. One of my daughters never followed this case. She is now keep texting me like, what is wrong with this judge? They think I'm crazy, but now they get it. So maybe just your average person is picking up on Canoni. I don't know. Mississippi, California girl. That's interesting. Peter, what are your thoughts on family friends talking about a case if they are witnesses in the case? It happens. And I don't think it's that abnormal. I think sitting there with a person you don't really know, like Carrie and Jenn did, and writing out a timeline, that's much more suspicious. Calling them, being interviewed at the same time, those are problems because law enforcement is supposed to prevent that. But like when you guys live life together and you talk about a traumatic event that happened to your friend, that's going to happen. That doesn't bother me that much. It's what law enforcement did or didn't do in the interviews, and when they did or didn't do the interviews, that's the bigger problem. Will the defense still be able to point out that ARCA, that they were initially hired by an independent agency and available to prosecution also? Yes, they're able to. Will they? Some minds differ. I would. It's so embarrassing and odd to see Bev keep interjecting like she's trying to protect Jenn McCabe, and it's got to be transparent to the jury at this point. But where the bias is, tell me in the chat. Is it obvious to you? Is it obvious to you? Peter, you hit 472,000 subscribers on this stream. That's awesome. Hit that subscribe button. We're pushing towards 500,000, which is just crazy. I can't believe it's going to get there. All right, back to the cross here, and then we'll get to more questions at the end. All right, she texted John O'Keefe when she saw Karen Reed's car, and here is where we get into the timeline, which I thought was one of the most important and best parts of cross. When these texts were, when she saw the car, when she didn't. Now, Jenn McCabe, you can call it shady if you want. You can call it crafty, manipulative, whatever. She was better in being vague in what she did or didn't do. Last time she was so sure. I got up and saw it. I sat down. I got up and saw it, texted him and sat down. I got up and saw it. Now she's like, I think it's 2. I don't remember what I said before, but today as I sit here, I'm saying 2. To me, I don't like it, but if I didn't see the first trial, I would think today's testimony was better. Again, how many times did you go look? The last time she saw the car was at 12:40 or 12:45. I was kind of confused. That's right around where that last text was. Either way, it blows the Commonwealth's timeline away. It's all totally screwed up. You couldn't have been seeing the car. When you went out and looked all these times you were giving the text messages, you would have seen John walking around based on the Apple Health Care data. You would have seen the car when Karen Reed's phone was connected to John's Wi-Fi back at his house. And also, Jackson did a great job of pointing out, you didn't see anything. You didn't hear anything. You walked up to the door, and I believe the door was open, the actual wooden door, and just the glass like screen door was closed. Maybe I was wrong about that, but even more so, you would hear if somebody was hit by a car or somebody was screaming outside, because there's some data that says John didn't die instantly, but then there's some that, that skull fracture would be immediately incapacitating him. That doesn't track. That doesn't line up to me. And we're going to listen to a little bit of that here. And at this point, I thought the cross was way better and calmer than trial one, but it really started to get clunky after this point.
You looked out and saw the SUV. Now the SUV is more toward the flagpole, correct?
Yes.
And you had a clear field of view between you standing at that door and the SUV. You've already described that view, correct?
I can see the SUV, correct.
Correct. You can see everything in front of the SUV as well.
I just would go to the door and look at the SUV. I wasn't taking in all the surroundings of.
Right. But just like you weren't taking in the surroundings, specifically looking at the tire tracks, and you saw the SUV sitting right.
That was also a good point. You saw the tire tracks. You weren't looking for them because you see stuff when you look out there. You see stuff like a body, 6'2", 210-pound body. He said, that's a big boy. She's like, I don't think he's that big of a boy. It's like, okay. I don't know. What's a big boy? You guys tell me.
Yes, and that's lighted where around the SUV was very dark.
I didn't ask you about lighting yet. We'll get to that.
I'm sorry.
Tire tracks. Even though you weren't looking for tire tracks, right?
Yes, I did.
Something stood out to you in your peripheral vision. Just looking out. There they are.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
That second time you looked directly at the SUV with no obstruction between you and the SUV, you did not see John O'Keefe standing outside the SUV?
No.
He wasn't sitting down?
No.
He wasn't lying down?
No.
You certainly did not see his body in the snow toward that flagpole?
No.
And you would have been looking directly toward that flagpole, correct? Directly.
I was looking at the vehicle.
Directly toward the flagpole, Ms. McCabe.
I was looking in the direction of the flagpole
Right.
at the vehicle. Yes.
Right. And you saw no body in the snow, did you?
I didn't look for a body in the snow.
I didn't ask you if you looked for one. You weren't looking for tire tracks either, were you? But you saw those.
I did see those. Yes.
And you did not see a body in the snow.
No, I did not.
John O'Keefe, 6'2", 216 pounds, brawny guy, big boy, right?
I don't think I'd refer to him as a big boy, but he was tall. Yes.
All right. You certainly didn't see him prostrate in the snow the way you found him the next morning, correct? Later that morning.
I didn't see anything on the ground. No.
Correct. The third time you looked out toward that SUV, it's still in the direction of the flagpole, but a little further up, a little deeper to the right, correct?
Yes.
Again, looking directly in the direction, at least, of the flagpole and that area of the yard, you're looking beyond that to the SUV, correct?
Yes.
You did not see John O'Keefe standing outside the vehicle?
I did not know.
He was not sitting outside the vehicle?
No.
And he certainly wasn't lying on the ground, was he?
I didn't see him.
And the last time you looked out, Ms. McCabe,
If you're the jury, what are you thinking then? Because he was there. According to the Commonwealth story, he was there. How do you not see that? That's always been a tough one for me as well.
this is now
The snow definitely would not have covered him at this point. Definitely would not have.
12:45 or so. The last time you looked out, the SUV was gone. Is that right?
Yes.
But you were still looking in that direction because that's the last place you saw the SUV. Is that right?
I looked out the window like this. I wasn't searching anywhere, but just glanced out the window, and I didn't see it.
I'm just asking you a direction. Not whether or not you were searching. I know you didn't see that search part. That's not my question. My question is, were you looking toward the area where you last saw the SUV around 12:45 a.m.?
Yes.
That would be directly across the lawn, directly past the flagpole, and directly into the street where you last saw the SUV, correct?
I glanced out. Yes. Correct.
And the same way you glanced out at the SUV, to use your words, glanced out and saw the tire tracks, right?
Correct. Yes.
But you did not see John O'Keefe standing on the lawn.
No.
You did not see him sitting on the lawn.
No.
And you certainly did not see his body lying on the lawn, did you?
No. No, I did not.
That's a really good job by Jackson, in my opinion. That is powerful. That's powerful cross. That's really good. A lot of people asking about the do you deny it? No, I think he should ask it, and we've heard it. Should absolutely say, do you deny it? Do you deny saying that before? Now, I think she would just say, I don't remember.
Ultimately, you left the location that night, the gathering at 34 Fairview. Is that right? You didn't spend the night there?
No, I went home.
About what time was it that you left the location?
Approximately, it was after 1:30. Approximately 1:30, 1:45.
So this is maybe an hour later, later than what we've just been discussing.
Yes.
Seeing the SUV. Who did you leave with?
I left with my husband, Matt, and Julie Nagel and Sarah Levinson.
Who was driving?
Sorry, my husband, Matt, was driving.
And where was Sarah Levinson and Julie Nagel sitting in that SUV?
They were in the back seat.
By the way, what kind of SUV were you in that night?
A Yukon.
Four-door
yeah,
extended
big.
seating?
Yes.
When the SUV pulled out of the driveway, it was in the driveway?
Yes.
When the SUV backed out of the driveway, doing a three-point turn, backed out of the driveway, did it go toward Chapman or did it go toward Cedar Crest?
It went towards Chapman.
So as you backed out of the driveway, you would have been heading up toward the flagpole side of the property rather than back toward the driveway side of the property, correct?
Correct.
You would have driven directly adjacent to the area where John O'Keefe's body was later discovered at 6:04, 6:03 a.m., correct?
Yes, correct.
You were seated in the passenger seat of the vehicle, not the driver's seat.
Correct.
You were seated in the front of the vehicle, not the back seat.
Correct.
You would have been closest to the yard as y'all drove past, correct?
Correct.
That's a newer model Yukon. I'm assuming that the headlights automatically turn on at night.
Yes.
So the headlights were illuminated.
Yes.
Did your husband, Matt, did he turn on the brights or did he leave the beams on low? Or do you know?
I don't know.
But certainly the area in front of that SUV, that Yukon, was well lit.
The lights were on. Yes.
You did not see anything out of the ordinary as you drove right by that location, did you?
I was looking in the back seat when we were driving.
Did you see anything out of the ordinary on that lawn as you drove by?
Why don't you just say no? You've already said you didn't see him when you looked out at whatever time it was. You didn't see him when you walked to the car. Although I don't know why Jackson didn't ask her that there. Did he ask her? I think he did ask her. You didn't see him. Just say no. Don't argue and tell the story again. Oh, should I turn my head, Mr. Brennan? Oh, why'd you turn your head like that? Oh, it's fancy. You should ask me that because I was talking to the girls in the back seat about the peanut butter sandwiches. It's like, just say no. Just say no. And I think that would go better for Jennifer McCabe.
In that SUV?
No, because I wasn't looking at the lawn.
You certainly did not see John O'Keefe dressed in dark clothing laying prostrate in the lawn.
No, I did not.
You said that you were turned around talking to the other young ladies in the SUV, Julie Nagel and Sarah Levinson. Is that right?
Yes.
You indicated that you were engaged with them about a conversation having to do with bread and maybe peanut butter or something.
Yes.
You didn't, as you passed by that location adjacent to where John's body was later discovered.
I will tell you one of the frustrating things is I understand all of this so much more because of the first trial and the jury's not going to have that. So as they're getting to the timelines and we're going to hear from all these other witnesses about when they left and when they saw the car and when they pulled up and who they saw when they pulled up to pick up somebody or not, we know all that's coming, but it's not here yet.
Didn't hear Julie Nagel say anything out of the ordinary about him.
The bread and the peanut butter. I'm not sure exactly where we were driving, but it was when we
I'm going
were
to
close
jump
to
ahead
them,
a
or
little.
close to them, something like that.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't have a transcript of yesterday's testimony. I'm sorry. Last year, you testified to something very different than that, though, didn't you?
And now he's going to try to get into some of the impeachment. We're going to watch some of it. It's not great. We're going to get to, I'll explain some of the other parts that weren't great. And again, do you deny saying it? I think is important. Or do you deny saying X, Y, and Z? And she said, no, I don't deny saying it. I don't remember. Well, then, you start to work in that direction like you guys have picked up on. I definitely think he's going to fine tune this cross over the next 2 days. Now that he knows beyond a shadow of a doubt that she's going to say, I don't remember, he's going to refresh her recollection and she's going to say, that doesn't help me remember. He will, I believe a good trial lawyer will figure out a way to get that stuff in and make it so blatantly obvious, whether it's like people have been saying, ask all these things you do remember, but you don't remember this simple thing. Well, then let me just show you this. So that doesn't refresh your recollection. Okay. Do you deny saying X, Y, and Z? And find ways to really highlight that and show the difference in the demeanor, the things that are just easily not true or inconsistent or stories changing. All of that is really important. I think he is going to be able to figure out a way to methodically go through it and highlight it for the jury. And the fact that he has this day, I think is going to be huge.
No.
Isn't it true that last year you testified that you got out on the passenger side of the vehicle, which is, we'll agree, the furthest side from the lawn as Ms. Roberts was driving from Chapman toward Crestview? Cedar Crest, correct?
Yes.
Class act beauty. So I do notice her looking over there, but here's another thing I will say. The objections from the lawyers, sometimes you can't hear because they're not close to the mic. So there's a couple times where I was like, why is she looking at Brennan? And he was saying objection and making an argument. So that could be one of the reasons. I don't know.
You testified that you were on the passenger side, and as you got out of the vehicle, you noted that Karen Reed was already at John. Is that right?
As I got out and walked around the back of the vehicle, the
So this is one. Okay. So this is why I'm showing this. I couldn't remember why I was showing this one. I was like, once you make this point, which I don't think is a big deal, move on. It's like, did you get out and see Karen doing this? Was it snowing so you couldn't see? How quick did she run up? Because to me, this is, if I'm a juror, I'm like, okay, she's probably heard this. She's given this testimony a few times. She knows what happened. Did she see it perfectly? Maybe not. This to me felt like a nitpick that was not worth the clunky impeachment. You tell me if you disagree. To me, this one was not as worth it to me.
shadowy figure of Karen had already gotten onto something.
You further testified that as you got out of the vehicle, you noted that she straddled John, lifted up her shirt, and went to lay on him. And Ms. Roberts went over and said she started removing snow from John's face. Correct?
I have the page and line number.
Where are
Sure.
you, Mr. Jackson?
May 17, 2024, RT 114, lines 14 to bottom, onto 115, line 4. Is that how you testified last year?
I'm sorry, would you mind just repeating it?
Sure.
Thank you.
You testified in substance that you were on the passenger side of the vehicle, and as you got out, quote, as I got out, end quote, she, Ms. Reed, was already at John. You indicated that you saw her straddle him, lift up her shirt, and lay on top of him while Ms. Roberts went over and removed snow from his face. That's how you testified last year, correct?
Okay.
Is that how you testified last year?
I'm not sure. I know.
Next question.
Would it refresh your
Do you deny saying it? That should be the follow-up question. I think he's going to make that change.
recollection if you look at a copy of your testimony from last year?
I don't think looking at it would refresh my memory. I know I might have used different words, but the bottom line is I got out of the car, went behind the car.
And here's the other thing. It's not even like your memory of what happened. Do you remember saying that? And then when I show you the transcript, okay, I said it. At least admit that you said it. You should be able to do that as a lawyer, and the judge just isn't really letting it. Bev wants everybody to know, this Bev Alford, wants everybody to know that not all Bevs are created equal.
Went over, and Karen had done that.
Mr. McCabe, I'm asking, do you think it would refresh your, what have your recollection of how you testified last year? Under oath. Sitting on that witness stand. I'm asking, do you think it would refresh your recollection?
Sitting on that witness stand, it's like, you might as well just say it, trial number 1 at this point.
See the transcript from last year.
I don't need to see my transcript. I know what I know, and I know what I remember. So
That's not my question. I'm not asking.
That's crazy. Like to me, it's like making my blood boil. As people who don't do this for a living, you've watched too many trials, right? You're almost experts at this point. You basically are expert trial watchers. So maybe you're not the right people to ask, but like, that's crazy for me to tell you that you reading your testimony from 1 year ago is not going to refresh your recollection. You know what you know today, and you're just not going to answer all these things that you did answer before. Like, to me, her demeanor, much better. She did not get as angry or nasty at most points through the cross. Her credibility, maybe worse to me this trial than the last one. Just refusing to remember. I don't remember. I'm not going to remember. And that's it. That to me is tough. That to me is tough.
What do you remember now? Asking how you testified a year ago.
whether I said it was as we're fighting over silly words, whether I said it as I got out of the car, we were there.
Words matter. They matter a lot.
Okay, so remember, Mr.
Words matter. I loved that. Words matter. Put it on a shirt, Jackson.
Whether I said it as I got,
How you testified a year ago.
whether I said it was as we're fighting over silly words, whether I said it as I got out of the car, we were there.
Words matter. They matter a lot.
Okay, so remember, Mr. Jackson, no comments. Please.
And that's fine. I don't mind Bev doing, Judge Canoni doing that. Go ahead. Tell him, don't do that. Words do matter. But I also think that was a smart statement by Jenn McCabe. We're fighting over silly words. Like, try to tell the jury, this stuff doesn't matter. These are all nothing burgers. He's trying to make a big deal out of nothing. Try to manipulate the jury a little bit to see it your way. I'm going to jump ahead here and we're going to watch the last few minutes here of the cross. But so I just skipped, 30 minutes or was it an hour? It was like an hour I just skipped. And to me, so much time was spent on her grand jury testimony. They tell you to say the whole truth. And you said things like, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? All questions, not statements, not an admission from my client. I hit him. He got that point across. She didn't really agree. I would have moved on. he belabored that point, as one of the commenters just say to me, just too much of it. Too much of it. I would have moved on quicker. I think he knew it. But I think he was just trying to end on kind of a high note. We're going to watch like the last 5 minutes here. Let me answer a couple questions first. Gina G, love your insight. Are the grand jury a normal jury? They're asked to do different things, but generally speaking, it's the same kind of people. They're not pro jurors. Amor of Alessi, maybe you said, but thoughts regarding the judge interpreting, reiterating, modifying Jenn McCabe's answers? I'm not sure she reiterated or modified her answers. I'm not sure I saw it that way. Caleb, do you think the way she testified today and the way the judge interfered will be grounds for appeal if convicted? No, I don't. Arball, what do you make of Jenn's answer that she hasn't spoken to Higgins since John's wake? He is Brian's friend, and they all hung out a lot before this. I don't know. I think it doesn't matter what I think. I think, maybe what a juror thinks. Does that matter? Rico, why can't they impeach Jenn? Clearly she's not a reliable witness. They are impeaching her. They are refreshing her recollection. They are getting her to say, I don't know, I don't recall, a bunch of times. How many grand juries did Jenn McCabe testify at? I don't know. I don't know if she did at other people's, at the other charges they try to bring at Karen. I don't know. Jocelyn, I don't know if you remember from the first trial, Caitlin Albert testified that she had taken Chloe, or Cleo, as Papa George would call her, to her house with her fiance that night when she left conveniently. Well, I'm pretty sure, I thought other people said she was in the house. Here's the point. There ain't no consistency that I can see. Lotus the Mermaid. Do you believe the judge will overturn the verdict if they rule in favor of Karen Reed? I know it's rare, but with this bias, I'm concerned she cannot do that. She does not have the authority or power to say, throw out your not guilty verdict. I'm saying it's guilty. She can do the other way around. Touche. Is the judge making herself an appellate issue by speaking for the witness, aiding them? I do not believe that that's going to be. Is it an appellate issue? Maybe. Is it going to be enough to win an appeal? I have not seen anything cross that line. I would be very annoyed if I was in front of her. If I was Jackson, I'd put on the record, don't say that stuff, judge. If you want to reprimand me and call me up to sidebar, fine. Don't say that stuff in front of the jury. Now, she could say the same about some of the things the lawyers are saying. Help me understand. Why does the defense make a big deal about the sparring between Bryans at the waterfall? I can't figure out the interaction is highlighting that. Thank you for your coverage. So I know a lot of the public highlighted it after the first trial. I don't see it as that big of a deal, but maybe it was a fighting mood that night. Maybe that's what they were trying to get at. Didn't Brian Albert state that Chloe was in his bedroom? That's how I remember it too, but I don't recall, and showing me the first trial will not help me. We'll just have to see what he says on this trial. The jury will hopefully realize someone is lying. Well, the defense is going to highlight inconsistencies. Eisgul, if people believe the judge mishandled the case or showed bias, is there an institution, a judicial oversight body that can take legal action against the judge after the trial? Can she be sued or held accountable in any way? Yes, she can be held accountable. If she does things unethically, she can be reported to the bar. She can either be, she's appointed so they can replace her, appoint somebody else. You can vote out the people that appointed her to appoint somebody else. There's all sorts of ways that you can replace her, reprimand her, have issues, but it's not like somebody's going to come and pluck her out of her seat right now. Can they subpoena a juror's phone to see if they did social media? Except under very extenuating circumstances. Go check out a lot of the videos. You probably won't, but if you really care about this, the Take Care of Maya case juror issues, we talked a ton about that because they try to do stuff like that. Emily, to me, anytime AJ pays too much attention to these small details, it takes away from some of the effect of him hitting the bigger inconsistencies. I tend to agree. I think the defense team disagrees because they all do it quite a bit with some of these nuanced issues. All right, let's watch the end of Cross here.
Who are these phone calls? Who am I speaking to
The
at this
initial
point?
phone calls that you had with Miss Reed.
Yes.
You never mentioned to Officer Lank or Sergeant Lank that Miss Reed mentioned anything about a fight or an argument, correct?
I don't remember.
You never mentioned anything about having Miss Reed saying anything about a cracked taillight in one of those two initial phone calls, correct?
Again, I don't remember all the things that I told Officer Lang.
And you certainly never mentioned that Miss Reed said anything about could I have hit him in either of those initial phone calls, correct?
Again, I don't remember my specific conversation with Officer Lang.
So you don't remember the conversation that you had with Officer Lank when it was clear light of day. You had a chance to take a beat and a breath, catch your breath, because it's now 11:30, 11 o'clock in the morning. You don't remember anything about that conversation. But according to your testimony, you remember in detail what my client said, waking you out of a dead sleep, correct?
So I didn't speak to him at 11:30.
So see, he is using some of those tactics. Like you can remember this, but you can't remember that. So he is using a lot of those tactics. But again, they can get lost depending on how many details you're impeaching. And I think it's fine to hit that point and move on. You don't have to get her perfect answer.
It was earlier in the morning when he came back to Fairview.
Let's call it 9 o'clock, whatever.
Okay.
Right? wasn't the same chaos as my client screaming into the phone that John never came home, waking you out of dead sleep, correct?
Correct.
But when you recounted that conversation or those conversations to Sergeant Blank, you didn't say a thing about Ms. Reed saying that there had been an argument, did you?
I'm saying I don't remember the specifics of my conversation with Officer Lank. I'm also saying that I was woken up out of a dead sleep. Karen showed up at my house screaming. I went out to help her look for John. And then we found one of my closest friends on the front lawn. And she was saying crazy things and acting crazy and
Ms. McCabe,
acting
that's not my question.
erratic. And so every
Ms.
police
McCabe, that's
officer
not my
that I
question.
spoke
Let her
to,
finish.
Again, if I'm a juror there, I'd be like, whoa, who is that? That's not just a soccer mom who was best friends with John O'Keefe. That's someone who's actively trying to get Karen Reed. And there wasn't a ton of these moments, but a couple of them, they came out. And I think Hank Brennan prepped her well. He prepped her well. If you know, you know. I think that this was one of those kind of moments, right? Wen said, knowing she was coached on how to evade questions, do you think Alan Jackson's prep is going to be better for tomorrow? So there's no court tomorrow. He's coming back. He said he has 2 hours left crossing her on Friday, and we'll have to see. Words matter. When Karen Reed said, I hit him 3 times to a crowd of people. Words do matter. Absolutely. And that's what Jackson's getting at. Did she say, I hit him? Or did I hit him? Could I have hit him? I think we know where Ben stands. Those words would be important. So Ben, do you take I hit him, even as it's been testified to throughout the trial, do you take that as an admission that Karen Reed knows that she hit John O'Keefe with her car? Let me know the answer to that. Will the jury recognize how evasive she is? I think some jurors may not. And they might talk about it and remind each other of what this was like.
every police officer that I spoke to, I tried to answer their questions the best I could. It took me hours and in some cases days to remember all the things that Miss Reed had said in my mind. I was in a state of shock. But the minute I remembered, she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. I called Officer Lang.
And your memory's getting better.
So she didn't remember it in a bunch of these interviews, but eventually she called Sergeant Lank and told him.
There are certain things I will never forget, Mr. Jackson.
Including the fact that you never, ever said, she said the words I hit him to a grand jury when you were asked about it 3 months after this. Correct?
She said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit
You
him.
never told that to a grand jury, did you?
I don't remember specifically that every grand jury and everything I said, but I can tell you with 100% accuracy, she screamed, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
You never said that to the grand jury.
I don't recall if I
You were
did.
there to get the truth, correct?
The truth is, she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
You were asked that specific question at the grand jury. What did she say at the scene in front of the female EMT? And you know what your answer was? You do, because you just read it.
I wasn't asked what she was said at
What
the
was
scene.
answer to that question?
The objection sustained. Ask one more clear question, Mr. Jackson.
What was the answer you gave in answer to the question about what was said by Miss Reed to the EMT, the female EMT at the scene? What did you say she said?
I don't know if I was asked specifically what she said to a female EMT.
All right, we're going to end this now.
Your Honor, I have one more question.
Go ahead.
I can't end it on this. You said-
Okay,
He says, I can't end it on this, which again, the judge steps in appropriately here and says, relax with that. But he's right. It's like, we got to get a better ending than this.
we're going to end this now.
Your Honor, I have one more question.
Go ahead.
I can't end it on this. You said-
Okay,
she
jurors,
said-
ignore the comments of counsel. Ask one question, Mr. Jackson.
You said that she said, could I have hit him? Did I hit him in the presence of the female EMT? That's what you testified to under oath at the grand jury, isn't it?
Yes, because she also said that.
All right, so folks, we are done for today.
And then, yes, because she also said that. Again, there were some moments Jenn McCabe broke character kind of, and it didn't go as well as a lot of her testimony did. But again, to me, McCabe did better than trial number 1, but we are far from over. Will Jenn have to answer to federal investigators? I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that. I think Jenn McCabe and the questions he asked or could never say just yes or no, can't they make her just say yes or no? So they could say, I need the answer to my question, but I don't remember. You can't make somebody say yes or no if they say, I don't remember. You are saying they're impeaching Jenn McCabe, but will there be any consequences for her? Is it just the benefit of the jury? Thank you for your time. So impeachment is different than perjury. Perjury is a crime. Impeachment is something that hurts credibility with the jury. So the consequences, yes, like you said, are going to be, will a jury not believe what she had to say? Why was Jenn McCabe allowed to add in comments like that was part of my answer? Our judge is supposed to rein that in. I feel like BC allowed JM to run the show. You are allowed to explain your answer. And the judge, if the lawyer's not letting you, the judge can step in and say, let them finish their answer. They have to answer your question, but they can explain it. Peter, do you think AJ will end with something big, or did he already cover the big stuff? I think he will end with something big. That would be my guess. that he's going to end with something really strong. This was the end of the day, not the end of the cross. Is there a limit to the number of retrials a case can go through? Not necessarily, but if in the interest of justice, so many trials, the defendant's been, held in limbo forever. Some judges will throw it out. Some appellate courts will even take a look at it if there are multiple retrials, but there's no you can only be retried 3 times. Peter, why is Judge Bev allowing these witnesses not to answer the question they're being asked? And why is berating the defense for pointing it out? Berating the defense is inappropriate, but if the witness says they don't know, the judge can't force them to remember. Now, the jury should be like, oh, isn't that convenient that you can't remember that, or that you don't remember your inconsistent statement? How do you not remember what you said a year ago? That's what should happen if the jury's picking it up. Females tend to feel more guilt and take blame for things, even if they didn't do it. That's common with females. Idiot Wind. It's in evidence that there's this other law enforcement agency investigating. JM and Carrie are so far. Can defense bring in the existence of an outside law enforcement agency with whom these people aren't happy to cooperate in closing in evidence? Not necessarily. That's really probably towing the line too much. Now, what would be interesting is I would say, can they say that same agency that came and questioned Jenn McCabe, they're the ones that hired ARCA? If the judge is letting them say it like that, I would love to make that connection. I doubt it, but I would love to make that connection. Favorite part today. This is 227 pages long. Jackson, I'll wait. That's the point. We know it's not in there as a lawyer. They say stuff like that, to try and, trick the jury. But sometimes it hits, sometimes it doesn't. To me, Jackson won that point. I don't know what the jury thought. Off topic. What happened to your finger? Cute Band-Aid. Thank you. Pickleball right off the knuckle, split the skin. And it was like gushing blood. It was crazy this morning. But we're all good. We're all good. And we finished out. Played hard. Nicole Kelly. So Jenn ran into the house with no worry her sister was dead or a stranger was in the house when she arrived. Kind of like the prosecution saying Karen ran straight to John because she knew where John was. I don't know. I don't know the answer. Yes. I feel like I do have to do this from time to time, James. I'm like, I'll read your comment, but I have no comment on your comment. That's your comment. Super chats are not my thoughts or beliefs. Summertime. Isn't being tried 2 times for some crime double jeopardy? Not if it was a hung jury. Amelia. I've never seen such an unethical and biased judge in my whole life. The world is watching. Free Karen Reed and all the best from Zurich. Welcome to Casey and all the new members. That's all we got today. A ton of overtime. Hopefully you guys all hit the like button. I'd love to see this one get to 17,000, maybe even more likes. We will have something fun for you tomorrow. We are not taking the YouTube day off, even though there's no court. We're going to have a fun conversation that is going to be really interesting. Ben, last comment here. Multiple people heard I hit him. I think Karen Reed was realizing she either hit him on accident or bumped him harder than she thought. I realize this is a pro Karen Reed crowd. Go easy on me. I want to hear from people like Ben, okay? You can disagree with him in the chat respectfully and nicely and tell him why you disagree. But if there are people out there that do think this and think that that's what the evidence is showing and that's what the comments mean, the jury could have those people on it too. There were 8 of them that thought a car hit John O'Keefe last trial. Let's remember that. Okay? Let's remember that. So thank you, Ben. Appreciate the comment. And I understand why people disagree with. That's fine too. But that's all we got. I love you all. Hope you have a wonderful hump day night. Until tomorrow, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast with new seasons dropping every quarter. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, The Lawyer You Know.